viewer and... Ow! Some guy was ringing bells in the corner. It was annoying. It's Christmas time! Yes, it's December now, which means it's Christmas time. That means all those Christmas decorations that you've been eager to put up since Halloween, it's okay to put them up now. Christmas is the one holiday that everyone looks forward to. And why wouldn't you? It's the happiest time of the year. They got awesome Christmas movies and television specials playing, and to be honest, that is my favorite part of this whole season. Sure, the gift giving and getting is good, the food's good, and just the joy of the holiday is awesome, but I look forward to watching these Christmas movies and specials every year. It's practically a tradition now that I watch a certain amount of Christmas movies. I plan on watching the Charlie Brown Christmas special, the Christmas Vacation movie, Home Alone, The Grinch, both versions, Elf, the Santa Claus 2, and the Santa Claus 3. What's the problem? Oh. Yeah, maybe we should talk about this. So if you don't know, there's a Christmas trilogy movie series that Disney put out called The Santa Claus, with an E. See how clever they are? They're just clever because they add extra vowels. The first movie, The Santa Claus, came out in 1994, and it focused on Tim Allen playing a man named Scott Calvin. It mostly focuses on Scott trying to figure out how to spend more time with his son Charlie after him and his wife divorced. So Charlie spends Christmas with his real dad, and the topic of whether Santa Claus is real or not comes up, seeing that Charlie learned a few days ago that he wasn't. And of course, around that time, Santa arrives at the Calvins' place, only for Tim Allen to run outside, scream at him, and have Santa fall off the roof, and yes, even dying. To make Charlie happy, Scott puts on the jacket and decides that he'll deliver the presents himself because that's what the card says. It says if anything happens, he's got to deliver the presents. It turns out that they're brought to the North Pole, to where that card states that whoever puts on the suit after Santa dies becomes the new Santa. Scott is now given the job as Santa, but refuses to do it. He goes back home, and over the next couple of months we see him getting fatter, growing more hair, and even getting a white beard. He becomes more jolly and gets the powers of Santa, and eventually he just decides to give up and decides to take the job as the new Santa. And everything goes well until Charlie then starts telling people that his dad is Santa, to where his mom and his stepdad get concerned and get a restraining order on Scott because this is how it all happened and stuff, and it's basically like one of those cheesy Christmas movies that has a resolution in the end. And it's one of those Christmas classics that you just can't celebrate Christmas without watching them, at least in my opinion. Fast forward to 8 years later, we get the Santa Claus 2, the Mrs. Claus, where Scott finds out that there's another clause to being Santa. It says that by Christmas Eve, he needs to have a wife or else he can't be Santa anymore. I don't know why this has occurred now, seeing it's 8 years later, but yeah, we're just gonna go with it because of movie. So Scott faces one problem as he needs to find a wife before Christmas Eve, but then comes across another problem when he finds out that his son Charlie has been put on the naughty list, which means now he needs to go down to his family to take care of this issue. But he can't leave the North Pole at such a busy time like this, so he makes a duplicate clone toy version of himself to run the place, which ends up taking too much control and it gets a little out of hand. This one starts to deal with a lot more different subplots. In fact, we got a good couple of subplots going on in just one movie, and we have to fit them all in a matter of an hour and a half. Eventually, though, everything gets fixed, and Scott does, in fact, marry someone who happens to be Charlie's principal, and everything ends happily. Charlie's on the good list now, and that's where we thought everything was going to end. But then we fast forward to 4 years later and we get the third movie, which is the one that everyone seems to have a problem with. The Escape Clause. This one focuses on the conflict between Santa Claus and Jack Frost, as Jack Frost is the only one in the mystical creatures realm of whatever faculty they have. He's apparently the only one that doesn't have anything special for it. So he wants his own holiday and decides maybe he should take over Christmas himself by making Scott say a certain amount of words and perform another clause, the Escape Clause, which means that the previous Santa needs to say, "I wish I never became Santa," while holding a snow globe, and it instantly takes him back to the time where he became Santa and has the ability to change time. This one focuses on a lot more subplots, including Scott with his new baby coming along the way, Scott bringing his other family along because they've never been to the North Pole, and then we have another subplot of his wife wanting to bring her parents because they never see them anymore, and then we got Jack Frost's plot, and then we got another plot, and it's just a lot. But it's still funny. So a lot of people do not like this film. In fact, it's one of the lowest rated Santa Claus movies in this trilogy. And after going over a few things, I think I've come to terms to why this movie doesn't succeed as well as the first or even the second one did. So one of the reasons is probably because of all the subplots. I obviously went over a lot of subplots that are happening in this film. We have the main subplot with Jack Frost as he wants his own holiday, and that transitions into him sabotaging Santa's job so this way he can take over Christmas because of the escape clause. And then we have another subplot of Scott preparing for a new baby, and then we have Mrs. Claus with her family and Scott with his other family, and it's just a lot of different subplots, and I can understand why it would be very hard to follow up because you have to remember all these things that are happening. I know one thing movies need are subplots. Sure, you could tell one story, but the movie would be more interesting if there were maybe subplots, but I would limit the subplots to maybe about 2 or 3 of them. This one's got at least 5 or 6, and it can be very hard for the viewers to understand what's going on and remember every little thing that's happening. Another reason is probably just because it can get a little boring at times. Now, this isn't saying that this movie is not funny. There are definitely a lot of parts that have me laughing at this film. In fact, all 3 of these films are both very entertaining and funny. But there are some parts, especially the parts where we just see Santa working, trying to fix things, that can come off as a bit boring because it doesn't really seem that entertaining. It just seems like we're just looking at people working. Sometimes the pacing runs a bit too long, it could run a bit too short, and also it goes a bit south around the time that we see Scott starting to not want to be Santa anymore and ruin things because of Jack Frost. And the last reason that I can come up with is that it's kind of ripping off a few different Christmas movies. Specifically, It's a Wonderful Life and the first Santa Claus movie. Now, I know that sounds weird, a sequel ripping off its first movie, but it has been done. First, let's talk about the obvious, which is the ripoff of It's a Wonderful Life. Obviously, the whole point of the escape clause is to reverse time and make sure that the person that is Santa at the moment never became Santa in the first place. It's obviously referring to It's a Wonderful Life as we see Scott look into the life where he never became Santa Claus. Except we have a little twist as Jack Frost is the one to become Santa and makes the North Pole into an amusement park kind of place. So even though it's ripping off one holiday film, it's got a little twist to it. And when I mean it's ripping off the first Santa Claus movie, obviously we see parts of the first Santa Claus movie in this, but there are some parts that do remind me about the Santa Claus. There's literally one scene of Scott's family begging to go to the North Pole, and they keep referencing the time that Charlie has been to the North Pole. Which, now that I think about it, is kind of another reason why this film probably doesn't work, because the main person that started this whole film is not even in it. Charlie is the second main character throughout the whole Santa Claus film. He was somewhat one of the main characters in the first movie, and yeah, it was a main focus in the second movie, but he's rarely in this film at all. We see him in the beginning, we see him in the alternate universe where Scott isn't Santa, and then we see him at the end because he just decided to join along with the fun. So there's obviously a big element to this movie that is missing, and that's Charlie. But I think that was done because he got older. Obviously he's not a little kid like he was in the first movie, and we saw in the second movie that he was starting to get older. In this movie he's like in high school. And, according to research, apparently older kids aren't cute for children movies. So those are the only things that I feel like are making this movie not be as big as the other two were. It's got a lot of subplots, it's boring at some points, it's ripping off another film, it doesn't even have one of the main characters in it. But overall, I'd like to think that this is a good film because along with the second Santa Claus movie, this was one of the first Santa Claus films that I saw. It's kind of weird, but I saw the second one first, the third one second, and the first one last. So it's a weird order that I saw the movies in. But I've grown up with this movie, so I have a different opinion on it. I like it. It's confusing why other people don't, but hey, if we all like the same thing, then life would be boring. So those are my thoughts on why I don't think the Santa Claus 3 works as well, why it may not be a fan favorite. Now I want to hear what you guys think. What do you think of the Tim Allen Christmas movies? Do you like them? Do you not like them? What's your overall opinion about the third Santa Claus movie? Do you think that any of the problems that I brought up are the reason why it doesn't work, or maybe you have other reasons? Do you agree, disagree with anything I said in this video? Tell me in the comments, and also leave me your suggestions for whatever movie, TV show, random thing you want me to talk about next. Thanks for watching The Wild Viewer. I'm The Wild Viewer, and you just saw me review a thing.